Welcome everybody to our College of Education Research Symposium. And this is a special session. So I am Ding-Jo Curry, the Distinguished Faculty of Educational Leadership and the Director of Leadership Institute for Tomorrow here at California State University, Fullerton. So this is, like I said, our annual research symposium. And this special session is on the future of community colleges. It's hosted by our institute, the Leadership Institute for Tomorrow, CREAL, and our very own EDD program. And our EDD director, in case you have not met her, Dr. Nancy Watkins is here with us. She is modeling being a servant leader by helping us with the technical end of our session today. So thank you, Dr. Watkins. You're always my hero, Shiro, in terms of helping us with technology. You're the best. Would you care to say your greetings from the EDD program?
I would just like to say welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm thrilled to hear about this session and so honored to have guests here to speak on the topic tonight. And I will say that this is virtual this year, but next year we will plan on a research symposium in person. But I'm very appreciative for the people who have come on the call and given us some time this evening. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Watkins. So with us today is quite a distinguished panel with leadership roles at the system as well as at the national level. I will start with our own California system leader. First, Dr. Saria Martinez. You know, her career started actually at the four-year system at UC, University of Southern California, my fellow Trojan, and UC Riverside, and joined Woodland Community College in 2015. And then later in 2020, I believe, that Dr. Martinez joined the California Community College Chancellor's Office as the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Student Equity and Success. That's an area where she had been a strong advocate and a champion throughout her entire career. I think that's why she was appointed to this role for the system. Dr. Martinez received her bachelor degree from UC Davis, and her master's is from USC, and later with a PhD in higher ed from Claremont Graduate University. So welcome, Dr. Martinez. Thank you for joining us. Then we have our second panelist is from our neighbor state up north, the state of Washington. Dr. Paul Francis started on August 1st of this year as Executive Director of the Washington Community Colleges. Prior to being the Executive Director for the state, he served as Executive Director of the at the Association for the Washington's 6 public baccalaureate degree granting colleges and universities. So he always had this system-wide experience, and he is a first-gen college student himself with a degree in political science, graduating summa cum laude from University of Arizona. So everyone in Washington that I talked to, at least, Paul, that with the 34, you have 34 colleges, look to your leadership in this new era of community college in Washington State. So welcome and joining us. And then we have the third panelist, last but not least, Dr. Rufus Glasper, a longtime leader on the national scene. He is now the president and CEO of League for Innovation in Community Colleges. Now, I won't give you a test, but if you do not know this organization, you really should look it up. The League serves as a catalyst for introducing and sustaining very deep transformational innovation within and across the community college nationwide to increase student success and institutional excellence. So if you've never been to a League conference or know about this organization, I strongly suggest you look it up and attend the conference. You'll be with wide-ranging leaders from across the nation. That's administrators and large contingency of faculty as well. So please look it up. Now, Dr. Glasper is Chancellor Emeritus of Maricopa Community College, one of the country's largest multi-college system. I have tremendous respect for Dr. Glasper's long and extended leadership career in the community college space. And we've shared space as chancellors back in the days as colleagues. So Dr. Glasper's background is in business administration with a bachelor's degree from Luther College and a master's from Northern Illinois University. And he has also learned a PhD in higher education finance from the University of Arizona. So you are in for a big treat tonight to be in the presence of this esteemed panel and on a topic of great importance to us, to those of us who are in the community colleges, to those of us who work with the community colleges. So I am going to start my first question right away. And you don't have the answer. I am not going to call on you. Just jump in, take your turn. In the latest trends in the community college enrollment and completion data report as put out by American Associations of Community Colleges, it indicated a continued downward trend in the enrollment ever since actually 2010. This trend has started. It's not just a pandemic. So there's been a lot of recent reports on now alarming enrollment trends, as you know. In particular, some states suffer more than the others. And there's also the student demographic shifts and the changing workforce needs in the world of community colleges. So how do you interpret those trends? And how should community college administrators, faculty, and classified professionals leaders be alarmed about that? And my follow-up question to that is how should they interpret these implications of those trends under the DEI lens? Because DEI is an important anchoring value for us long before it became popular actually nationwide. So this is an important question for us. This is how do you interpret the implications of these trends under the DEI lens? So let me turn it over to our panel. Whoever wants to jump in, go for it.
I don't think any of us are going to rush, but I can definitely give it a shot here. So thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you who are here at 5:30 p.m. I know how hard it is to show up, but it definitely is a pleasure, especially to be on this esteemed panel, as Dr. Curry mentioned. So I want to enter this space with a sense of humility to have asked to join this esteemed panel. And what's not on my resume, I always like to share that, right? Similar to Dr. Francis, first generation student. I actually grew up in Compton, so not far from where you guys are in Southern California. So that's always home for me. And as a first generation student, obviously work in the community college system, it's important to me, especially in California, because most of my family members have gone through the system. So now being in this role, it's a way for me to give back and work with the student populations that obviously look like me and are reflective of the students that we serve. So I want to start there. But to answer Dr. Curry's question, I really want to start off by noting, and I think you did this, Dr. Curry, is that the changing demographics and the enrollment trends is not really new to our community colleges, nor are we the exception. Our four-year colleges and universities across the country have also experienced, I think, these similar changes in the last few years. So if we're going to have that authentic conversation about enrollment, I think we have to address the fact that we've had these declines happening all of the time, but they were actually just masked, right, by the fact that we had students that were still coming into our system and were replacing the students that we were losing at the time. So I think if we can start there. And then what's important, I think, to note now is that we have an opportunity to be more adaptive to our students' needs. And I was actually on a tour last year with our chancellor at the time, Dr. Gonzalez, listening to the students. And what we heard is that they want us to remain flexible, really, and adapt to the life changes that they're experiencing. We can no longer do business as usual. We really have to respond with a sense of urgency right now. And since the pandemic, we saw that our colleges have transitioned to offering workforces online. And we really have to continue to provide not just the courses, but really look at full degrees and certificates that can be offered online so that students have access to completing their education online. We experience, and some of the students share, that they are having to return to work and work more hours than normal. They have family members that they have to support. So having that online access, it's really something that we have to continue to look at as a college. But again, to really look at how we are offering complete, not just the courses, but complete degrees and certificates in that respect. And then also, we're also exploring in California, the community college system, we're exploring the competency-based education. And that's really an intentional outcomes-based and equity-minded approach to earning a college degree in which the expectations of learning are really held constant, but it's time variable through a flexible and self-paced, kind of high touch and innovative learning practices. So CBE is really a change from courses comprising a degree to competencies and sub-competencies within the learning modules that's comprising the actual degree. So both the evaluation of the student achievement and the award of that degree or credential are based solely on the demonstration of the mastery of the competencies. So I think we really have to think about the approach in increasing the access and opportunity for our working Californians with no college or some college access and opportunity for the working student. And then we know that currently about 4 million adults in California have some college but no degree and are not currently enrolled in an institution of post-secondary education. So this is certainly one way for our colleges to improve their college enrollment, but obviously we want to continue to remain innovative and think about other ways that we can create that access for our students. And I'll stop there and let others answer.
I guess I'll go next, and I will co-sign with a lot of what Dr. Martinez said. Dr. Curry, you used the word alarmed, and I think that we should be alarmed. First of all, let me say I'm so happy to be here. I'm really humbled. I'm honored. I see a couple of my board members. I have a 9-member board. I have my board chair, Phyllis Gutierrez Kenny, and also Jay Rich as well. So I'm really excited to have a couple board members here. But I think we need to see this as a crisis, and we need to treat it as such. We are in the midst of a perfect storm. If you think about the changing demographics, and I think we all know about the changing demographics. I don't need to summarize, but it's not only the composition, but it's also the fact that in Washington, this is a startling fact, we will see no net increase in high school graduates from 2019 to 2037. That's in the Knocking in the College Door report from WICHE. So we cannot continue to rely on K-12 students to meet our degree goals. And we do have an ambitious goal in Washington, a 70% attainment goal that is linked with the needs of our economy. As you can imagine, we have a high-tech economy in Washington State. And we simply cannot continue to import people like me who've been educated elsewhere. That leaves Native Washingtonians untrained for the jobs of tomorrow. In Washington, as Dr. Curry mentioned, this is a national trend. We've seen 10 years of declining enrollment. So we can't blame COVID. COVID maybe has exacerbated and revealed some of these, but we've seen a decline of 40% in headcount, a decline of 30% in FTE across men, women, across racial ethnic categories, our academic programs, our workforce programs. It's fairly consistent. So I think from my point of view, we need to change and we need to do things differently. And I think we need to be bold. Fortunately, Washington's community and technical college system has a reputation for doing innovative things. We were one of the first states in the country to offer applied baccalaureate programs, for example. We were very early in terms of our guided pathways work. I think we were the first state in the country to receive state funding for guided pathways. The work that we've been doing around IBEST has been nationally recognized. So I think we've got this really wonderful DNA and this history and this desire to do better. But the question is, how do we do it? Like Dr. Martinez was saying, for me, a lot of the focus, of course, K-12 students, we have got to think about that. So we've got to think about how we do more in the dual credit space. how we can drive equity in dual credit, because at least in Washington, our dual credit programs do not reach students of color. They do not participate at the same levels. So we've got a lot of work to do there. But also, how do we increase participation and awareness of our workforce programs? We have one of the best state student financial aid programs in the country. And whenever I bring it up, people don't know about it. So how do we do a lot better in terms of the knowledge in our K-12 system and increasing outreach efforts as well? For me, a lot of the work, as Dr. Martinez said, is related to those with some college and no degree, or those new traditional students, I like to call them, those who have maybe no college and no degree. We have 1.1 million Washingtonians with some college and no degree. Think about how much larger that is than any one graduating high school class. It's not easy to serve those students because they stopped out for a reason. Many times it's financial, but there are many other barriers. So I think we have to be thoughtful as a system about how we can reach out to those students, but also serve them well once they come back to their college. It also means being able to really think about what are the unintentional barriers that we create for students. I think about prior learning assessment, for example. Prior learning assessment policies differ across the system, and we're collecting them right now and reviewing them. So what can we do there? How can we think about helping students overcome any debt that they may have, institutional debt, for example, right? How do we provide specific support services that are tailored toward the need of adult working students, right? How do we address issues around childcare and transportation and other pieces? So I think I'm really excited about that. How do we develop micro pathways and more micro credentials, right? This idea about stackable credentials, because I think that's really the future of higher education that can lead toward an associate degree, a bachelor's degree, and professional degree and beyond. And then finally, I'll stop here. Thinking about how we can serve our current students better. Guided Pathways, I think, provides a lot of opportunity, and we've done some amazing foundational work in Washington over the last 7 years. But we have to think about basic needs, for example. We have to think about better utilizing students as leaders, ambassadors, mentors, and such, right? We have to think about many other pieces, I think, that improve the student experience, that ultimately benefit retention, because it's not just about importing new students on, it's about better serving the existing students that we have. So I'll stop there. I know I just spoke really fast, but just some quick thoughts. Thank you.
Well, that's quite a lot that you mentioned. Just for curiosity, back in the days when I was doing professional development for baccalaureate pilot programs in California, we lean into Washington State's experience. All your 34 colleges have baccalaureate degrees offering that now?
It's a good question. We have more than 130 programs now across the state, and 33 of our 34 colleges currently offer them. So we are really excited to see the distribution across many different academic areas. And colleges are required, these are ultimately approved by our state board, but they are required to show the student demand, employer demand, faculty qualifications, and they're also required to show a financial viability as well.
Thank you. Dr. Glasper.
Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank you for allowing me to be on this panel with Dr. Martinez and Dr. Francis. Dr. Francis, before I forget, bear down, since we are from U of A. I want to open with a statement, and then I want to use that statement to frame my comments. I believe that there is an evolution that is occurring within higher education. And the phrase that I want to start with is, and don't attribute this to my business background, but to my framing of the issue and where I think we need to go. Education moving at the speed of business is what I'd like for you to keep on your mind as I go through what we're dealing with right now. I really appreciate the comments from our panelists earlier that this revolution started to occur even before the pandemic. But in terms of enrollment loss, National Student Clearinghouse will say that community colleges have been impacted double digits, more so than four-year institutions. And first generation low income African-American men are almost non-existent in terms of showing up at our doorstep. So we ask the question, where are they? What are they doing? And many are not on these work roles because they are looking to take care of their families and themselves, but they are not working with someone who gives you a W-2. They're working where they can find some jobs. So there are a number of people that are not even being reported in this workspace. When I talk about education moving at the speed of business, I want to capture it by saying during the pandemic, Boeing came to one of the colleges that I'm affiliated with and said, we need 425 harness workers. The college says, we have supported you over the years. We'll take that back to our curriculum committee and we'll get back to you in 10 months. Boeing said to them, no, we need workers in 10 weeks. So when you're encountered with that kind of pressure, what do? And I appreciate my colleagues talking about the notion of a micro-credential or a micro-pathway that's stackable. You start thinking about how can you get someone into the workplace, how can you retain them, and how can you make that easy to get in opportunity, which is on the non-credit side of the house, convert to credit so they can complete a degree and transfer to a four-year institution if that is their desire. But so many of our institutions are waiting to go back to quote unquote normal. And as they wait to do this, it's not happening. Stimulus money is declining and it has probably an average shelf life on average in our colleges of less than a year. And it will not be there. So we need to think about what do we do with some of our empty spaces? How do we repurpose facilities? How do we reallocate resources? And how do we look at enrollment that in some cases has dropped at least 1/3 in many of our institutions across the systems? What I am looking at, and I heard guided pathways. The league is working with our colleges to move in the direction of micro-credentials and micro-pathways, but maintain the integrity of guided pathways. We are also working with the notion of credit and non-credit. I proffer that in the next 5 years, you will see the merging of non-credit and credit programs that has been unprecedented. Across the US, the state of Maryland has been funding credit and non-credit at the same rate for over 25 years. And other states like Arizona and in majority of our other states are funding them separately. And now these sides are competing because when you want to respond to a Boeing and you have this archaic system and you have to work through all of these policies and procedures, you can't respond quickly enough. So they'll start looking at other options. I also like to throw on the table that many of you are aware that as of last summer, for regional accreditation, there are no regional accreditation boundaries. So that regional accreditor that can move faster, quicker, and more innovatively will begin to draw other colleges that want to move with micro-credentials and micro-pathways and merge these non-credit and non-credit programs and begin to look at the broader issue of quality assurance, which is defined by regional accreditors. And I used to be on the board for the Higher Learning Commission, which represented 20 states. It's defined as a master's degree in the area or a master's degree plus 18 hours. That cannot exist if you're trying to get someone into the promotion of STEM programs, cyber, IT, construction, manufacturing, when those who have the most talent and technology is changing so rapidly that we have seen that even more so during the pandemic, that we can't spend enough professional development money. We don't have enough professional development money, and faculty can't go away for 6 months to a year because the time they get back, it's already changed 4 times. So we need to get individuals who are in the field day to day. So many of our companies are saying, hire our workers and bring them on as adjunct faculty so that we can meet the needs and we know that we have some qualified training. So the League for Innovation is involved in trying to be the voice of faculty. A few years ago, we had a Gates grant which looked at the notion of guided pathways and others as they were growing across the country. And the faculty voices that came to the table across the US said, we are in favor of these movements, but we have not been included. Our voices have not been heard. It starts at the administrative level and it's adopted, and we are expected to implement. And with all these other changes that are coming in, we want our voices to be heard. We don't want to be lost in these new strategies. We want to know our role. And if you're bringing in other workers, then what role will we have? Will we have a load? Will we be able to feed our own family? So there's a level of fear. What I am saying at this particular point in time, we need to spend as much time bringing in new students as we can about cultivating our faculty and staff to make sure that they are comfortable with the changes that are going to occur and that they are part of those changes. The last thing that I will say as we talk about this is the whole notion of finance in general. And what does it mean to finance our institutions? I also proffer that probably in the next few years, you will see a downsize of community colleges across the country. Smaller colleges that are not able to survive, are not able to generate enough resources, will merge with larger colleges, and they're trying to defer it by some state supplements. But we have two states. We have at least the state of Arizona that I was in, that I'm still working in right now and I live in. When I came to the system in 1986, 28% funding from the state. And in 2012, it was down to 0. For Maricopa and Pima, the two largest colleges in the state that serve over 80% of the students. This investment in higher education is a reality. And when I talk about the last thing I will say, we talk about work-based learning. Why don't we think about this idea about adjusting our 16-week and 18-week or 8-week classes so that they can revolve around a portion of our students where workforce is a priority, where working is a priority, and we have faculty that will adapt to their schedule and the students not have to adapt to an archaic schedule, an agrarian schedule that doesn't work anymore. So with that, I will stop and wait to get engaged again.
Absolutely. My goodness. Okay, I told you that you're in a treat. This is a royal treat. Our panelists are giving you a lot just from my first question. I hope you're taking notes. There's a lot that you have all shared just from the first one. Let me ask you the second question. So I heard the words about the perfect storm. I heard the evolution, where we need to go. So this is a follow-up to that, you know, community college is really a very complex system. It's not like the four-year system, pretty straightforward. Our mission is so complex. So because of that complexity, we have a lot of challenges, but we also have a lot of good because of the complexity and who we serve and how we serve them. So there are a number of challenges cited in the 2020 Chronicle Higher Ed report, Reclaiming the American Dream, Community Colleges and the Nation's Future. It was originally put out by American Association of Community Colleges. So what are your perspectives on the community college challenges and of today, and how might we prioritize and systematize strategies to make a pivot or shift in those challenges?
Since I started last, can I start first?
Yes, absolutely.
And I'll bring in what I didn't connect, and that's DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is that lens that we're looking at across all of our institutions, and now I am hearing the word belonging. We have so many students, and many of our staff and administrators do not feel that they belong in our institutions. And they're trying to find their way. And as we look at the report that was put out some years ago and has been updated, we're still looking at the same issues. Low enrollment rates, And we don't have faculty, we don't have staff at the numbers that look like the students that we are serving, the majority of students. I'm in the state of Arizona now, and the state of Arizona is moving, 36% of Arizona is now Latino. So when you add the other groups, we're moving close to 50%. It's scaring the hell out of all kinds of folks. And we're trying to figure out what does that mean for our traditional kind of classrooms, the curriculums that we share, and how we engage individuals. And there are still wide skill gaps. We should look at this as an opportunity for us to take advantage of ways to recruit and adapt our systems to those students who we claim are the priority of our institutions, to put our resources there. The League is currently involved in a project funded by the Garcia Foundation here in Arizona, and it's on housing, hunger, and jobs. How can you connect to three of those and understand that they are not disparate pieces? And our challenge is to provide opportunities and sustainable solutions with existing wraparound services that currently exist within the state of Arizona, within the counties that these colleges are involved in, within the state of Arizona and nationally. And we've been involved a little over a year and a half now. And I am amazed at all of the resources that are there. But in this technology environment, the most critical one is access to broadband. Because without the access to broadband, you're getting all of this opportunities to do virtual reality at home with welding and some of these other opportunities, but you can't do it if you can't access your cell phone, you can't access the internet. So we need to think about what does it mean to take some of these millions of dollars and not just have a bus that we've transported into our communities, but have some permanent access to broadband facilities and look at those foundational items that can be appended to our system. And I think everything, for the most part, we can hit the top 4 or 5 that were on that list that still are on that list, but we can prioritize them with funding and access and with wraparound services that colleges do not have to fund because it's part of their community. And education at the speed of business, have the businesses pay for a lot of these changes because they will have the benefit of the workers.
Thank you.
I also was going to talk about racial equity. So I'm new, as you heard from Dr. Curry, and one of the reasons why I took this job is because of the vision statement that the state board adopted, and I'm going to read it here. It's short. Leading with racial equity, our colleges maximize student potential and transform lives within a culture of belonging that advances racial, social, and economic justice in service to our diverse communities. That is a bold statement, right? And I think about the fact that 49% of the students in our system are students of color. So if we are not applying an equity lens to everything we do, we are not adequately serving our students. And I don't mean being performative and just hiring a diversity vice president or creating a diversity blueprint. That doesn't serve anybody well to be performative. I'm talking about doing authentic anti-racism work in our system. And so in every meeting that I'm in, and I'm in a lot of meetings, I ask, well, how does this relate to equity? And I think that's what we need to do as leaders, is to have those conversations. I've been pleasantly surprised in my first 3 months how few people have disagreed with me about this vision statement and the goals that go along with them. I expected a lot more pushback, but as I travel around the state and I met with a business CEO of our Association of Washington Business today. I met with a couple of union leaders today. There isn't anybody who I think doesn't see the demographic shifts that are occurring and see the need to better serve our students of color, right? Because we have not done an adequate job. Throughout the pandemic, the achievement gaps in Washington have continued. We haven't dented those, right? So we've just persisted those. So I think that there's some really incredible work happening on the ground in Washington, a number of our colleges. I think their commitment is there, but ultimately, you have to set metrics and you have to measure progress toward those metrics and your goals. And right now, for example, our retention rate, I presented this to our board a few weeks ago. Our retention rate as a system, student retention rate has not increased very much, right? It's pretty much stayed the same. And that gap between how well we're serving students of color and our majority students has not changed either, right? So I think you have to measure and determine and assess how you're doing, and then be able to go back and say, maybe we need to be doing something else because this isn't working, right? The data is showing us that these are well-intentioned efforts, but we need to redouble our efforts there. So I'll stop there. But for me, I think we have to be very intentional about applying the equity lens. I think that's something that feels like we're in a moment now where we could do that, where we weren't maybe 10 or 20 years ago. I say that as a person of color, as a first-generation college graduate who started my career recruiting students of color. It feels like many people have caught up to the EDI work. And the question is, how do we do that in a way that really affects change with the students we serve?
Thank you. And Dr. Martinez, we have our share in California on charge.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I promise Dr. Francis and Dr. Glasper, we did not talk before this meeting, but I think we were all along the same lines. And I can just tell you, even here in the last several years with our California Community College system, we've actually come together around those bold goals to improve student outcomes, right? Including those closing the achievement gaps, increasing the degree and certificate attainment, and transfer to four-year institutions, which are all challenges that were mentioned in the report. And then one of the things that we have is the Vision for Success, which is really our framework, right, for making the Chancellor's Office and our community colleges as a whole truly student ready. And it's our foundation, right, with clear goals and commitments for our system. So I'm going to actually put them in the chat there. So if folks want to take a look at it, so you can see what is the vision. We call it our North Star for the California Community College system, but also in the face of the new challenges, as Dr. Glasper and Dr. Francis mentioned, right? We're really focusing on the role in breaking down the persistent systemic barriers that we're experiencing, especially those linked to the racial and ethnic identities, which has never been more important, I think, for our system than probably in 2020. I think we started to push the agenda a little bit harder with everything that was going on in the world. But with this update to the Vision for Success, we're really reaffirming our goals and the core commitment to continue to drive the improvement, success, and equity. I think we're all talking about equity and supporting our colleges. And we boldly said to build anti-racist institutions. And I don't think that was language that we were using prior to 2020. But we were able to do that. And I'll talk a little bit later about the call to action from our chancellor to our system. But one of the things we're asking our colleges to do is to think about culturally relevant curriculum, right? And designing with the students in mind, especially as faculty are creating the curriculum for our students. We want to make sure that the students can relate to the curriculum and see themselves in that curriculum. So that was one area. Secondly, we also want our colleges to integrate and analyze those equity gaps. And we want to foster the use of data and evidence to make data-informed investments and decisions. Because what we like to believe is that where we put our money, that's where, right, we're making some value. So we want to make sure that that is informed by the data that you see at the local campus. And in addition, our colleges should adopt and embrace policies and practices that are anti-racist. Again, thinking that in California, over 73% of our students are students of color. That is a huge number. So we want to make sure that equity is at the center and that we're addressing and adopting those policies that are going to be anti-racist. And then right now we are a big, not a push, but something that we're leading is our equity, employment, and opportunity, really encouraging our campuses to think about what are the practices for pre-hiring, hiring, and then the retention strategies for hiring faculty of color, diverse classified professionals within our system, and administrators. So we actually are in the process right now of having what we're calling our showcase of best promising practices within the community college system. So colleagues have shared some of their promising practices So next month will be the first time that we will be able to share that. In Northern California, San Jose City College is going to be hosting us, and then we'll have another road show and showcase in Southern California as well to gather and talk about those promising practices for hiring. So really our hope is that our institutions are developing those courageous leaders who will not sit really on the sidelines and just perpetuate the status quo, but instead, I think, need to find ways to lead from where they are. And I always tell, even our classified professional, I started there. So it didn't matter what role I had. I always saw myself like, okay, I can change the policy for this procedure for my student. I can remove those barriers. So never think that you have no influence. And I think wherever we sit on our college campus, that we have a certain level of influence and that we can help remove some of those barriers for our students.
Thank you. I think all three of you are hitting the nail on the head, and that's probably why you have this synchronized response to that question. That demographic does determine your destiny, and what we do with that is the most important thing. I'm going to lead into our third questions, which is on the topic of leadership. And we have actually quite a variety of leaders here in the audience. So I see chancellors from Hawaii, trustees. I see a couple of academic senate presidents and faculty and classified professionals too are also here. So we have everybody in the system almost represented. So this topic of leadership is near and dear. And after all, we are in the leadership program here. So the latest trend in community college enrollment and completion, talking about how important leaders is going to serve in this role. And Leadership Institute for Tomorrow, LIFT, is targeting new generations to become leaders like yourself today, leaders like yourself, except that picture yourself 20 years younger and just now starting out. That's the kind of leaders that for our institute we target. And we're also looking at our doctoral students many are aspiring leaders. So we believe leadership matters a lot, and our community colleges are a perfect breeding grounds for leaders who understand the diversity context. Certainly, like Dr. Martinez and Dr. Francis, you have walked that road before your first gen students. So we need leaders like you who understand that diversity context, the equity and equality paradox, and certainly the inclusion value. Since I've always said, community college, we accept top 100% of students who submit applications. So I think you all agree that leaders is critical. So I would like you for you to talk about leaders of community colleges here, to the leaders of all the different roles that they play, about leadership mindset, the capacity and the practice that required to confront those challenges in order to make a paradigm shift in the community colleges. You certainly mentioned the systemic change that is needed from the inside out. So I want to cite here the most recent report published by Estela Ben-Simon for the College Futures Foundation. It was put out just this month. The report titled Whiteness Rules, Racial Exclusion in Becoming an American College President. Among quite a few key findings, let me just cite a couple here. White rules are hidden in plain sight, meaning presidents of color attest to the benefits of having mentors and programs who are navigating the hidden curriculum in presidential searches. Another finding, presidential candidates of color must conform to the white archetype type to be deemed qualified. So my third question is going around this leadership dilemma, that about leadership for the community colleges. Based on this latest research, that's reality today. Yet we have to open up this pipeline. So why are there so many vacancies to fill at all levels in the community colleges, all the way to the presidency? Yet we're not seeing, especially the upper ladders, not too many diverse leaders arrive there. Certainly Ben Simone's study point to that and many issues and problems that she points to. So I would like for you to provide some concrete, innovative, and responsive ways in which the system of community college can address this vacuum of diversity competent and the capacity excellent leadership crisis in the community college system.
Maybe I'll get started since I think I'm the only one who hasn't begun with a question. But Dr. Curry, this is such a key. I'm so glad you asked this because this is a really important question when we talk about leadership. And this is, I think, one of the greatest, I don't want to say challenges, but maybe just kind of occurrences right now, just transformations, I guess is a better word, in the community and technical college system, is that we're seeing this dramatic shift in leadership. We have presidents and chancellors with decades of experience who are leaving. They're retiring mostly, right? So you're seeing this generational shift where people held on past COVID, or kind of as we began to emerge from COVID, and then retired, including my predecessor who had been with this agency for 38 years. And then I think the job of president is harder than ever. I really believe that. I think that just being a public policy leader is more challenging than ever, right? Just go on social media. Everybody has an opinion these days about what it means to be a leader. I think we're very lucky in Washington that we have been able to recruit some really talented leaders of color as presidents. That was not always the case in the community and technical college system, but I think if you look at many of the new leaders, you do see kind of a new generation, a new face, some diversity there across the state. So I think there's an excitement about that. We obviously have much more work to do, and it's not just at the presidential level, it's at the vice presidential level, it's at the dean, right? It's across faculty, as was mentioned earlier. So we certainly have a lot more work to do. In Washington, very quickly, I want to mention that we've been thinking about this as a system for a long time. For 18 years, we had a leadership academy that enrolled about 200 people with 18 classes of individuals who desired to be a president or a vice president. We had 14 current or past presidents who had gone through this leadership academy, did some really amazing work in terms of understanding financial management and legislative relations and other piece. But one element that was really missing from that, we found, was diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've been able to retool that program with some funding from our colleges and some funding from the state board, and are just about to kick off a new equity leadership system that I think is really exciting. It's going to focus on equity. It's going to talk about adaptive leadership, and really thinking about who participates in this particular program, giving everybody involved in this cohort, here's an adaptive challenge on your campus. Go and how would you solve it, for example, right? How can we provide a credential or a LinkedIn badge or something to those who've gone through the program so they see it as meaningful? So I'm really excited. We've just recently hired a leadership development director who came from the Air Force Academy in Colorado, who is pretty fantastic, by the name of Rod Smith. So I'm happy to share the work that we're doing around leadership development, because we're trying to do it as a system, and we're trying to really center it on those who have felt like, to your point, Dr. Curry, that they haven't had mentors, right? They don't know where the ladders of opportunity lie. So how do we reach out to them and make sure that not just at the presidential and vice presidential level, across the system, we're cultivating leaders? That's what we're trying to do here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Curry, I will go. And Dr. Martinez, you can bring us home, huh? In 1989, I was part of an inaugural leadership group put on by the League for Innovation in the community college. It was called Diversifying Leadership in Community Colleges. Out of 20 individuals from around the country, I was the only one who said that I will participate in the program, but I have no desire to be a community college president. At the time, I had set my scopes on being a chief financial officer, which I achieved, and then was was being asked to move into the chancellor's role in Maricopa. During that particular point in time, I went through a system of what I thought was relevancy and compassion and professionalism and decency to a board that was more political. And I went from going in with saying, no, I love a 5-0 vote, and a 4-1 works and a 3-2 works. For 6 years out of my 13-year tenure, one of my board members, and I had 4 of them that were far right, one of my board members dropped a note on my desk every week, or photos every week, of a joke about me being African American and about President Obama's big ears, and that all I need is one more vote to get you out of this job. So when you start thinking about diversity in these jobs, you need to start thinking about the folks that they will be working for and the diversity and training that needs to occur with the boards and the acceptance that leadership should reflect the students in the organization, as I stated. In about 3 weeks, the League for Innovation will host its Executive Leadership Institute. We have 40 individuals that say that sometime within the next month to 6 years that their desire is to become a community college president. And at the end of approximately 8 days, we want to say that it's either run, Forrest, run, or you need to figure out exactly how you can sustain yourself. One of the things that we're trying to do within our community and what I do, and I had 3 pillars as a chancellor: inclusiveness, engagement, and respect. If you go into this job thinking that you know everything about it, you'll get eaten up. And you need to include everybody in your community, because there will be many battles now that will be political battles, and it has nothing to do with rational thinking. So understanding political rationality and traditional rationality is part of what I believe is the foundation. If you go in thinking that 2 and 2 is 4, and you only get 1/10 of what you asked for, at least you got 1/10. And you need to stay at the table and keep going and stay in the game. I'm involved in a community group at Arizona State University. It's a university group called the Center for the Study of Race and Democracy. And through the center, I've been on it now about 8 years, we will be reaching out to the colleges, as we did prior to the pandemic, to help us with issues that are germane to the nation, germane to the state, and germane to the city, so that we can have conversations, and so that our students in our classes are invited, our communities are invited to listen, because when we need them, we need to be able to call on them, and they need to be educated around what we mean about diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we're doing about hiring and not, and what battles that may need to be fought when a chancellor needs to step back and not throw their career on the line. And I will tell you, during this pandemic, and it was said earlier, and Dean Joe, you said it, community colleges, to be a president in these day and times is different than when we were a chancellor or a CEO. And you need to know when to fight and when to walk away. So I'm saying that understanding your environment and that it's more political than ever is very important, and that the community that surrounds you becomes that ecosystem that can help you survive and thrive and enjoy your job. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez.
Thank you. And I'll keep it short because I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure that we have time for questions here. But just to follow up on what was already mentioned, some of the items, at least for California, I have to say that we have a board of governors that has been extremely, extremely supportive of the diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility agenda. In 2019, we actually started this work, and they had 68 recommendations for the board of governors. I can tell you that they accepted the 68 recommendations from this task force. Then it became an implementation work group. And then in 2020, we had the call to action that says, although we had 3 years at the time to implement the 68 recommendations, our chancellor says we do not have time for 3 years. So we had to expedite those recommendations. And I'm going to put in the chat again, if anybody wants to take a look at it, our whole DIA plan and the 68 recommendations. But part of that work included having everyone, all of our stakeholders at the table, from chief instructional officers to the CEOs to trustees, right, to student leaders, everyone at the table to really talk about how do we work together to make this happen for our system. Because as you know or don't know, in California, we have 116 colleges, 73 districts, and as Dr. Glasper mentioned, these are all board of trustees now at the local level who need to implement this work. But of course, it's going to look a little bit different. So how do we lead that work and working together? I was a liaison with the trustees from our chancellor's office. So I had the pleasure of working with them and the CEOs to talk about, and those two working together, right, as well, was very important to think about, because the pressures that our CEOs have on their campus to move this work forward, they can't move if they don't have the support of their board of trustees. So one of the areas that I know our board of trustees have taken the charge is to say, we need to educate ourselves as board of trustees. What does equity mean? What does that look like for me to do it at the local level and support my CEOs to move this work forward? So I think, as Dr. Glasper mentioned, thinking about what are the conditions that you're walking into, right? Who are you working for? And taking these tough leadership positions at the local level. And I just got to the chancellor's office 2 years ago, but I worked for 20 years on a campus. So this is a different level to kind of look at it from the system level versus the local level. So implementation is very difficult, but I think that with the support of the trustees and them educating themselves and really saying, how do I work with my CEOs and my leaders on my campus to make this work happen, it makes it a lot easier and able to succeed as a leader on the campus. But I'll leave it there just because I want to make sure that we have room for questions.
I'm not sure we have room for questions.
Okay.
I'm looking at the clock, and you have been just fantastic, phenomenal. I really thank you for, all of the information. I hope everyone feels informed, inspired as well. But I do want to circle back to each of you. Just in the last, we have I'm looking at the clock, about 3 minutes left. So how about each of you, just a closing comment? Something that you feel strongly about. It could be a call to action. It could be an elder's advice. It could be a challenge question that you want to give out. So please, as we close. Dr. Martinez, I'll start with you.
Okay. I had three things. I think as we think about the work that needs to be done, especially as we focus a lot on equity, and I think that is huge for us to focus on as well. And it's going to really require a complete mind shift. And I call us to be three things. The first one is to be committed, being committed to the work and really showing up and reiterating and not being afraid to reiterate when it's not working. Try something else. Don't keep doing the same thing if you're getting the same results. The second is to be courageous. I want us to be able to have the courage to use our voices and raising the difficult issues and providing the tough feedback and really sharing sometimes the unpopular opinions in many cases, but we need to have that voice. And then the last thing is about collaboration. We know that we cannot do this work alone, and the true progress will be made really when we can collaborate and reach across divisions to better serve our students and really to help each other to do the work. So thank you. Thank you again for your time, for being here.
Great. Paul?
So I also like lists of three. My number one would be keep the focus on students. It's very easy to talk about institutions or kind of other pieces, and those are important, but at the end of the day, it has to be, is this policy good for students, right? My second thing would be find mentors. In fact, establish a personal board of directors that includes mentors, allies, confidants, kind of other individuals in your life who can help to lead you along your career path. That's been really valuable for me. I haven't always done it, but I'm really trying to do better there. And then I love the point Dr. Martinez made about collaboration, because we cannot do this work in a vacuum. And if we're going to be successful, we've got to work with business and labor and K-12 and tribal leaders and community leaders and a whole bunch of other folks, right? And so it's going to take all of us working together to really accomplish that. Thank you.
Dr. Glassberg.
I would like for you to consider leadership as a game. And I'm not trying to think about it in a de minimis term. In order to be in this game, you have to make a conscious decision to be a player in the game, to know the rules of the game, and to know the players that are in the game. If you don't decide to be a player in the game and understand those other factors, then you will become very frustrated. And once you become frustrated, then you will think that you want to leave the game, or you won't put your efforts there. This whole notion about finding balance as a leader, good luck, you know, but strive for it. Try to make some time for yourself. But the reality is, if you're going to be committed to this at whatever level in the organization, you need to be able to look behind you and that there are followers. And if you're the kind of leader that there are no followers, and the last thing I will share with you is what I would tell people. I'm a person who likes to have fun in my job. And I walk around with a smile on my face the majority of the time. And I told my faculty and staff and others that if I did not have a smile on my face, ask me why. But when you do, be prepared to help me put the smile back on my face. You would be surprised how many folks would come up to you if you weren't normally jovial and smiling. I'm a good technician, but I'm a people person and I like to smile. And you have to be able to smile and push your way through and engage and make the decision to enjoy and walk away. And with student success in your lens, just go talk to a student, get refreshed, and then go back to the game. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that all of you are taking notes on such a sage wisdom that has been shared by our esteemed panel. Thank you very much. And I hope you can unmute yourself and give our panel a big round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody here have as well. So, and we thank you for joining us today from all different places. I recognize some of the old colleagues as well. So thank you for joining us. And the session concludes at this point, and we have a recording. If you wish to share this recording with others and stir some conversation and discussion on your own, we will share those links with you later. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.